Okay. So, are you ready for more? Yeah? Always ready for more. Okay, good. So, we are going to carry on with the Mahamangala Sutta, surprise, surprise. And some of the things in this sutta are kind of very ordinary in many ways, and so you may think it is but sometimes this is the thing about life. We want to make something special out of the ordinary things. Ordinary life does not have to be ordinary. It is what we make out of the ordinary that makes it extraordinary. Yeah, so ordinary becomes extraordinary. That's kind of the idea here. So, and the purpose of so much of the spiritual path is to integrate everything into the spiritual practice and to think of everything from a spiritual or Buddhist kind of perspective. And when you gain that perspective, everything becomes meaningful. Every breath, every time you go to work, everything you do, anything can become meaningful from that spiritual or Buddhist perspective. So that is the idea here. So let us have a look now at verse number 3. This is the third verse of the Mahamangala Sutta, obviously. And it is something as follows. So just reading it out: to be educated and to have a vocation, to be well trained in one's chosen field, and to speak words that are well spoken. This is the greatest good fortune. So here you can see some of the things that on the surface are quite ordinary. To be educated, the Pali word here is bahu satcha, which literally means that you have heard a lot. A lot of hearing. It doesn't mean all the noises of KL, that's kind of not the kind of hearing we're looking after here, but having heard a lot of good things. Sutta, everything at the time of the Buddha. Learning, education came through hearing, so you heard things. So having heard a lot means that you have taken on board a lot of knowledge and understanding. You become an educated person. That's what education meant in those days. And so that was whether it was an ordinary education, like learning a particular trade or whatever. You learned that through hearing. So if you want to learn you want to be educated in that sense. But you also want to be educated in the Dhamma sense, and that is also has the same kind of meaning. Bahu satcha, and that might be the most important way of thinking about this from our point of view. You want to have a lot of knowledge of the Dhamma, not too much. You want to have kind of this critical, the important knowledge of the Dhamma, just the right amount of knowledge. That's what you want to have. And so this is one of the reasons why we have this fairly kind of intensive courses here at the BGF, is to gain some of that deeper knowledge of what the Buddha was talking about, the suttas. This is very, very, very helpful as part of the path. So being knowledgeable. You can dredge out some verses in your mind. Do you know any of these things by heart? It can be nice to know some of these little verses by heart. If you find something that you find very inspiring or very nice, and you can know the Pali, and then you can kind of understand, because you may understand the Pali a little bit, you can translate the words, and you kind of gain a kind of closeness to the word of the Buddha by knowing it in that way. So it's quite common for monastics to learn by heart. Certain things in the Pali, especially things like the Patimokkha, the rules and regulations for the monastics. You can often learn by heart, and so you can chant. It sounds quite impressive. You can just go on chanting for 45 minutes continuously in Pali. That's kind of the Patimokkha. For the bhikkhunis, even more difficult, even longer Patimokkha. It goes on for an hour maybe at least. So this is Bahu Satcha. So come back to the suttas, know what the Buddha was talking about, be educated in this. And then you have this idea of having a vocation. Well, that means just having a job, having a particular kind of profession or a trade that you are into, that's your vocation. And that's a big blessing in life, to have a vocation. But it can also be a bit of a curse. You've noticed yesterday how many people were asking about, problems at work, the bosses and the co-workers, what are we going to do? It's so difficult. Yeah. If you are the boss, then the worker is difficult. If you are the worker, the boss is difficult. Yeah. Regardless, doesn't matter where you are, everything is hard. And this is and so remember the right kind of attitude here. It's great that you have a vocation. It's great that you have an education that gives you the possibility of earning a living. Yeah, if you don't have a vocation, you can't make a living. It is really, really difficult. So you should be happy already that your parents have looked after you and sent you to school and kind of given you an education. That's a marvelous thing. Yeah. It's so. But as a Buddhist. And if you are serious about the Buddhist practice, it's important to have the right attitude towards this. Otherwise, you end up with these endless problems. And remember that from a Buddhist point of view, or from a spiritual point of view, it is about how you use that job, how you use that position you have in a way that leads to spiritual progress. That is the most important thing here. And why is that so important? The reason why it is so important is because you never know what the results of your job are going to be here. Yes, ideally you want to do well, you want to have success in the projects you do, you want to get along with your co-workers, you want to have a promotion, you want to get a pay rise, all of these kind of things. You may want that, but is it going to happen? Don't know. Yeah, it's uncertain. It depends on all the external factors over which you have no control. You don't know whether the boss, even though you may be the kindest person in the world, somehow the boss doesn't like you. You know what it's like sometimes? It doesn't matter how nice you are, how good your heart is. Still your boss somehow bypasses you and finds the scallywag in the corner. That's the kind of the person the boss likes. Yeah. It's so hard sometimes. It's so unfair. And life is unfair. And because life is unfair, don't rely on those things to make you happy. If your boss overlooks you, it's your boss's problem. It's not your problem. The boss is stupid. You are a good person. You are doing a good job. And if the boss doesn't see that, actually it's nothing to do with you. Yeah, you just, okay, whatever. Yeah, okay, boss, you have your life, I have my life. Doesn't matter. You do live, you do that work because you do it out of kindness. You have customers, you have co-workers, you have all these people in the world who are touched by your work. If you do that work with kindness and a good heart, with an act of generosity, then you are adding real value in the world, value that is beyond the mere job that you are doing. You're adding value to people's lives. And that is why, even if your whole monastery burns down, actually I forgot to tell the end of the story yesterday, the monastery didn't burn down. Yeah, that was just a fear it was going to burn down. Actually, it didn't burn down anyway, so all that fear for no reason. But even if your monastery burns down, okay, you come back the next day, you just start from scratch, and that's fine. Why? Because you did it for a different reason. You did it for something positive, to build up spiritual qualities. So remember that. Then nothing is ever wasted. If that is your attitude, it's always going to be useful, regardless of what you do. Even if the results don't come, there will be different results that come. The spiritual results, the Buddhist results will come instead. Then you are on the right track. Then every time whatever you do, it's going to be positive. So have a vocation, do your job, but do your job with the right kind of attitude. I'm setting the bar very high here, and I know that thinking like the way I'm saying now is quite hard. Yeah, it's quite difficult, but at least move a little bit in that direction. And the more you move in that direction, the more satisfied you will be with life, the less trouble you will have. It doesn't matter so much what the people around you think. What matters is your own integrity and your own how you live your life. So to be educated and to have a vocation, basically comes down to spiritual practice, even though you have to live an ordinary life as well. Then to be well trained, vinayo, in one's chosen field. This is a little bit kind of my sort of dodgy translation here. Because the meaning of this, susikito also means well-trained, and vinayo means trained. So it's like trained and well-trained. That's kind of the literal meaning here. But because the context is vocation, I've just called it being well trained in one's chosen field. But this can mean well trained in anything, well trained in the Dhamma. Yeah? Vinayo means like you're well trained in the Dhamma. Vinaya means training. It is often the monastic law is called the Vinaya, but the actual root meaning of the word is training. So it means that you are trained. Yeah, you're trained and you are well trained. So this is what you want to do. You want to be well trained. You want to have a deep understanding and then practice accordingly. And this can be true for your work, but more importantly, it is obviously true for the spiritual practice, that you are well trained. So again, just basically more of the same, if you like. And then the last one is obviously, now we're coming much more to the spiritual practice, to speak words that are well spoken. So this is where we get to the Subhasita is well spoken words. Subhasita Chayavacha, words that are well spoken. So this is where we get to the more important Dhamma content. So what are these words that are well spoken? And I want to look at this phrase from a few different contexts and look at some suttas that elucidate this a little bit. And some of these suttas will be familiar to you and some may not. So let's see what we have here. Before that, I will have a little bit of coffee because the coffee has arrived. Yay! I'm only doing this because I appreciate your generosity. That's kind of no. I'm being just being naughty. So let's. The reason I'm a naughty monk is because Ajahn Brahm is naughty, so I'm just following in Ajahn Brahm's footsteps. Okay, so let's see. So this is from the Anguttara 5s, number 198. Yeah, so many suttas, 198. Wow. So this is called well-spoken words. Mendicant speech that has 5 factors is well-spoken, not poorly spoken. It is blameless and is not criticized by sensible people or wise people, if you like. Yeah, so this is the thing. So ideally your speech should have these 5 factors. And it's kind of, nothing kind of revolutionary in this. But let's have a quick look at those 5 factors. It is speech that is timely. Speech that is true. Speech that is gentle. Speech that is beneficial. And speech that is loving, it has here. Loving, I'm not sure what the Pali is there, but anyway. Speech with these 5 factors is well spoken, not poorly spoken. It is blameless and not criticized by sensible people. So this is this is actually quite interesting. Yeah. The first one is maybe the most important one in many ways and the most difficult one to do. Speech that is timely. Yeah, very often we speak not when it's timely, but we speak when we feel compelled to speak. I must speak. Yeah, I don't care what anyone else thinks, but I want to speak. Now is my time to speak, and I will speak because the defilements are pressing on inside, and they say, "This I must speak now." And sometimes, if you get upset about something, you have to speak because of that. Or because you're greedy about something, you have to speak because of that. Because your mind is restless, moving about, you want to share your thoughts with someone else. But one of the kind of important reasons why we speak, which I think people often underestimate, is because of the ego. The sense of self. The sense of self. We want to be here, we want to exist, we want the world to acknowledge our existence. And so we speak because the ego is driving us to speak. It feels like you exist when you speak. It's the same reason why you think in meditation. You think in meditation because the ego wants to express itself. When you think, you feel like something, and that feeling that you have when you think to yourself is often the sense of self that kind of gets some sort of satisfaction out of that thinking. And speech is just another way of the sense of self expressing itself. You want to exist. You want to say, here I am. Yeah, these are my words, and this is my opinions, and these are important, and or whatever. And of course, all of this is ultimately defilements. All of this is ultimately things that are not really real. Yeah, the ego is there, but it is just an expression of some underlying wrong view or some underlying problem. So notice that. Notice, and after a while you kind of get a bit fed up with this ego that always wants to express itself. You think, shut up, ego. Yeah, I don't want to hear this nonsense that you have to kind of always conjuring up and then kind of creating and concocting out of nothing. So speech that is timely is speech that is useful somehow. Speech that adds value in the world. If you can add value in the world by making that speech a gift to other people, this is my gift to you. I'm going to speak in this particular way, saying something that is endearing, something that goes to people's hearts. We're going to look at some of these qualities later on. Something that brings people together, something that makes people feel good so they can practice better. Sometimes you may need to correct something, or whatever. Timely speech at the right time. If someone needs to be corrected, know the right time for correcting other people. Sometimes you know it is the wrong time because you know they're not really ready. Don't speak because you want to say that thing. Look at when it is going to be acceptable for the other person. Timely speech. This is what this is about. So very important and quite difficult to do because very often the compulsion to speak is so great and you can't really stop yourself. There's a nice sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya 3 is 100 I think, or 101. And this sutta is about how meditation is a stage-wise process. And I've spoken about this sutta many times here before, but just a quick reminder. And so meditation or the path goes gradually. You start off by overcoming the coarser defilements, then the middling defilements, and the refined defilements. And the final defilements you overcome are thoughts about your country, thoughts about your family, thoughts about your social position or something like that. And all of these things you can see are things that relate to the sense of self. This is my family background, this is my country. These are the things we identify with. This gives us a sense of identity. And so sometimes the mind wants to express that identity. We think about these things because it makes us feel who we are. And so sometimes you will think about your family, in your meditation. You think about your other aspects of your identity, whether you are blamed or praised or whatever. And because this is a way of expressing that ego. And so you can see how the ego gets in the way of meditation practice. So let go of some of that identity. Who cares about that silly identity? Okay, so you are, you may be a mother or a father or a son or a daughter. Well, we all are, at least son or daughters. We may not be mothers and fathers, but certainly sons and daughters. Everyone is that. Hope you are. If you're not a son or daughter, then that's interesting. Not sure what you're going to be. So, but kind of irrelevant, right? It's kind of, we are human beings. It doesn't matter whether we belong to that family or that country or this country or that culture or this culture. It's kind of irrelevant. In the end, we have human minds, and those human minds, when they are developed, are basically the same. They are blissful, they are happy, they are unified. And that brings us together as human beings. We don't need all of these things that differentiate us. And that leads ultimately to wars and problems and all kind of things. Because this is my country, that's your country, and you treat us badly, so we're going to treat you badly back, or whatever it is. It's so superficial. It's so small-minded. In the end, we are all human beings. I was just looking at some of this war going on in Iran now. There's not enough to have wars in the Middle East, not enough to have wars in Ukraine, so you've got to start another one in Iran just to make sure that there's enough wars in the world, because otherwise it kind of gets too boring otherwise if there's no wars going on. But I was astonished. One of those kind of very interesting things that you see when you see that. There were some American soldiers that were killed, It was only a small number, like 10 soldiers, something like that, And the Americans was, oh no, our soldiers are dying. There's 10 soldiers. Like 10 is nothing. It's a war, right? 10 soldiers. In Ukraine, there's 1 million people who died. And then in the Iranian side, there was 1,000 people. No one mentioned those 1,000 people. They were only concerned about the 10 people in their own country. 1,000 people in Iran, that was irrelevant. That was kind of collateral damage. That's kind of what is to be expected. And isn't that kind of crazy? The fact that you kill 1,000 people in Iran is irrelevant, whereas if 10 of your own people die, then it's kind of a big deal. And this is because of this kind of differentiation between my country is more important than yours. My country is what matters. These other people, they are just kind of, I don't know what they are, but they are not people quite in the same way as people in our country. And that's a terrible way of thinking. It's creating, then this is what destroys so much in humanity when we think like this. Creating divisions, creating the separation between us. It's a very beautiful way of thinking that we are, on a deeper spiritual sense, we have so much in common, because that mind that is developed through the spiritual path is the same mind for everyone. That's why it feels like you are unified with the whole world when you go in a very deep state of mind, because in a sense you are unified. You're reaching levels of samadhi that are expressed in exactly the same way for everybody. And so getting rid of some of that sense of self that creates these divisions is a very beautiful thing to do. And that is what opens the way to deep meditation as well. So timely speech is one way of doing that. Not following the ego, following the sense of self, but following what is right from a Dhamma point of view. Speech that is true, okay, obvious, right? You can agree on that one. You're not supposed to lie, so please don't lie. Yeah, can? Okay. I like the Sri Lankan head nod. I'm really into that because it's kind of gentle. It's not too harsh. Yes, no. It's kind of, yeah, okay, maybe. Yeah, nice. True. Gentle, yeah, gentle. Speak gentle speech. It's so nice when you hear people speak gently. Yeah, you can feel, you feel at ease when someone speaks gently. One of the reasons why I love listening to someone like Ajahn Brahm is always very gentle and nice. And you can feel that when you are in the presence of someone who has that gentle demeanor. You feel you can relax. You don't feel afraid. You feel that there is a sense of goodwill there. You come back to gentle speech later on. Beneficial. Yeah, it should be beneficial for the other person when you speak. Not beneficial for you. Yeah, maybe beneficial for you as well, because we shouldn't, we shouldn't kind of overlook ourselves. We should have love and compassion for ourselves as well. So if you need to speak for yourself, that is also okay, beneficial for you. Sometimes you need to speak. Sometimes you need to get things sorted out. That's fine. But it should be beneficial in one way or another. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless. It shouldn't just be random, idle chatter, which kind of goes everywhere. And the last one, it should be loving. What is the Pali word? Is it Peyavacha? Is it Peyavacha? Metta-cittena. Okay, so that means that with a loving mind, yeah. So with a mind of loving kindness, and so it means that when you speak to someone else, you should do it. The intention should be, or it should come from metta. Should come from a sense of love or friendliness or kindness to that other person. Not the sense of aversion. Very often we think that we have to say things, and very often that thinking comes from aversion or anger or ill will, not from metta. Not because we want the best for the other person, because we have to say it. We kind of think it is for the best of the other person, but actually it isn't really. It's coming from a selfish point of view. If you're angry and you speak out of anger, it's always going to be selfish. You have to do it because you feel it is right. So how can you really be loving? How can you be friendly to the other person? That's the question here. Are you really looking for their benefit, or are you just being compelled by your own inner defilements? That's the question there. So isn't this beautiful, right? If you can speak like this, wow, you can really, this is marvelous. Of course, it is again, all of these things, the Buddha always puts the bar very high. It is difficult to always speak like that, but that's the point. It's supposed to be not necessarily easy. Yeah, that's kind of the point of all of this, because then we have to stretch ourselves. And when you stretch yourself, that is when you learn. That is when you go further on the Buddhist path. There should be a stretching involved. And that's kind of why the bar is set very high. But you can always improve a little bit, and then a little bit more. Yeah, you may seem like, I'm never going to be able to speak like this. But the thing is, you will one day. It's just that you take baby steps, one step. What's the old saying? A journey of 1,000 steps, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? And then suddenly you are at your goal. It's like yesterday when we were walking, I think Venerable Piyadasi thought, wow, this journey is too long, yeah. But actually you made it back, right? We made it back here eventually, so that was good. So, yeah. Anyway, so this is Anguttara Nikaya 598. So, is there anything else? No. So that's it. I think there was a verse there as well, but the verse was probably just reinforcing what was said in the non-verse part. So, let us take a 5-minute break, and then we will carry on now in a few minutes. Okay. So, let us do some questions or comments or anything you'd like to talk about.
Ajahn, I wish to ask you, is this sentence timely and beneficial?
Timely and beneficial?
This sentence. So I will say this sentence.
Uh-huh.
Every successful man, there is a woman.
Every what? Okay, all right. Is that timely and beneficial? Maybe, yeah. I mean, it's true, right? I think the idea there is that no one lives in an isolation. No one lives on their own. We all depend on other people in our life. And of course, the person who you depend on the most is your spouse, your husband or wife. Yeah. So behind every successful woman, there is a man, probably a man as well. Yeah. Behind every successful man, there's a woman, because we work together as teams, and that's kind of how the world works. No one lives in isolation. So I think there's a lot of truth to that. So yeah. Is it timely? Well, it depends, right? It depends on when you say it, but okay, certainly true, I think. Anyway, anyone else, please?
Good morning, Ajahn. I was reflecting on what you shared earlier about timely speech, and I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more about how do we determine whether the speech or what I want to say is timely. Because I was reflecting how sometimes I want, like in a work setting, and I want to share my feedback that is true, gentle, beneficial, and loving. Yeah. But all the other 4 factors. Yeah. But in terms of timely, I somehow know that it may not be accepted, because I somehow know that my colleagues, my bosses, they have a certain mindset. They've already sort of determined a certain way. Yeah. And I wanted to say, maybe there's another way, there's another alternative that could be more beneficial. Yeah. So in this context, should I just, for the sake of my peace and my energy, should I just keep quiet? Or should I say, no, let's think of another alternative?
I don't think there is any right or wrong, any one way of doing that. I think it's different ways of doing that, and it depends on the situation. And sometimes you feel that you have to say things because this is an opinion that you may think is important for the company or whatever, and maybe it will be beneficial. And sometimes you don't know for sure whether it will be accepted or not. It's uncertain. Maybe the chances of being accepted is small, but maybe it's not zero. And so you do it, and so that you feel at the very least you have given your feedback, and then it's up to them whether they want to accept it or not. As long as you are at ease with them rejecting it, then it's no problem. But if you get upset if they reject your brilliant solution, then it's going to be difficult for you, right? Then maybe it's better not to say anything because you're going to get upset at being rejected. But if you can do it and it makes you feel better to doing it, okay, no problem. Then do it. So it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes you just have to feel the vibe of what. Not of vibing here. I'm talking about vibes all the time, but a lot of life is about vibes. It's about intuition. Sometimes we don't know. There is no rational way of knowing whether something is right or wrong. Okay, so you have to use your intuition. Okay, today it feels like you don't know. It's like the meditation before. I didn't have a clock, so I just tell. Okay, I just go with the vibe and the feeling. And then when I came back to my room, okay, exactly 45 minutes. I thought, wow, that's amazing, isn't it? It was just the right time. Because sometimes the vibe is quite good. You have a natural intuition for things. But if sometimes you may feel that your intuition is a bit off. Sometimes you can feel that. When your intuition is off, is usually when you have defilements in the mind. When you're coming from a bit of upset or a bit of desire, yeah, that's when your intuition is going to be off. And so then be more careful. Then it might be better not to say anything. If you feel your mind is clouded by defilements, because then both logic and intuition are important ways of making decisions. But both logic and intuition, both of them are clouded by defilements. Your logic is no good and your intuition is no good. So clear out the cobwebs of delusion before you say anything or do anything here.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back to yesterday, the Avijja Sutta.
Yesterday? Okay. Well, okay. All right. Yeah.
On the item number 9, when the 7 awakening factors are fulfilled, they fulfill the knowledge and freedom. So this knowledge and freedom, is this the same as the Mahachattari Sakka Sutta, the last 2 factors?
Yeah, basically.
Sanya,
Yeah,
Jnana and
Sammajnana and Samavimukti. Yeah, basically it's the same thing. I think some people argue that Sammajnana means stream entry, Samavimukti means arahantship, and that is possible. In that case, it's not exactly the same, because in this case we're talking about arahantship, we're talking about Vijja Vimutti, which means arahants, fully enlightened ones, whereas Sammajnana arguably is stream entries are not fully enlightened, but kind of first stage of enlightenment, but roughly the same thing, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I have another question.
Yeah.
This is about the meditation.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we have, we sense that, we have emotions arises, like anger or jealousy. So we are told to stop and observe the emotions.
Yeah.
And then we observed all the sensation that arises, like the tension in the head, on the chest, or the heat. And after a while, you will sense that the sensation will gradually disappear.
Yeah.
So after that, do we stop there, or there is another steps that we can practice so that gradually we will not be so overtaken by those emotions?
So there's many methods for overcoming the negative thoughts. That is one way. It's just observing the thought. And usually if you observe it, you're taking away the fuel that drives the thought. Because the thought only carries on if you add fuel. So if you're keeping about that difficult situation which gives rise to the jealousy, then the jealousy will carry on. But the moment you start observing the thought, you're taking away the fuel, and so it tends to die down by itself. So this is one way of doing it. You're just staying with it. But sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you kind of observe and it kind of comes back again. You observe, it comes back, and you're going to get really fed up. So one of the things that you have to do sometimes is to use a counter thought that eliminates that thought completely. So this is one of the reasons why we spend a lot of time learning how to contemplate, for example, how to overcome anger. Anger is almost always directed at other people. It's a people thing. And so you learn to view people in a new way. Instead of learning to see someone as your enemy or someone who is bad or whatever, you learn to see the people as someone who is suffering, or someone who has a bad habit, or so you have compassion for them instead. And so that can be very useful in meditation, because the moment that that ill will comes up, and you can notice it's quite strong, and it's not going to go away easily just by observing, you take away that perception of compassion instead, and you put that in there, and you remind us that actually it's not got nothing to do with me. Yeah, this has nothing to do with this. It's their problem, and they actually have a problem. This is their bad habit or whatever. So I should have compassion for them. And so you bring down that perception of compassion. And suddenly the whole thing changes completely, and it doesn't come back again afterwards. If you observe it, it disappears. It comes back very easily because you haven't dealt with the underlying issue. But if you deal with it by thinking about the person in a new way, you're dealing with the underlying issue. You're seeing the person in a new way, and the defilement doesn't return very easily. It's a more powerful way of dealing with the problem. But it takes a bit of reflection. Yeah, you have to reflect outside of meditation. And this is one of the things that I like to teach on these retreats, is how to reflect in a way that undermines the defilements in a more powerful way here. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay.